Welcome to Living or Dying, a resource of selected readings and images to go along with the book.
This is Larry Butler speaking, editor of the book Living or Dying, and I'm going to read a section from the book that I wrote called Legacy, beginning with a quote from Janet Paisley. I sink, cliffs crumble, stones fall. I know this sea, it wins all. Legacies, obituaries, funerals, eulogies, belongings. What happens after death? After the initial shock, if the death has been unexpected, those left behind need a kick-start into a whole host of things to consider and things to do. Even when you know someone will die soon, it is difficult to predict how you will respond after the death. Our friend and the host of the dialogue group, David Donison, knew when he would die and was well prepared for it. But were we? Immediately following David's death, we phoned NHS 24 because it was a Saturday and his local GP was not available. Because his death was sudden and unexpected, they notified the police. After several hours of interviews, we were finally given a death certificate, and by midnight could contact the undertakers. He had donated his body to medical science, to the anatomy department of Glasgow University, where he taught for many years. But they didn't accept it. So the family began organizing the funeral, and I went through his huge address book, marking all the people I knew personally, which was over 150. That was only about a quarter of his personal contacts. Alan Keelihor notes, "The more you look for death, the more you find that the only thing there is love." So what has David left behind? What are we left with? What is David Donison's legacy? He always signed off emails and poems with his initials, DD, preceded by as ever. Before considering David's legacy, let's remember his wife, Kay Carmichael's legacy. Kay was a founding member of the Bank Street Writers, and we met in her kitchen. After she died, David took over the whole role of hosting. This is how legacy gets passed on, like a baton. They meet about every 2 weeks, and for the first 18 months after Kay died, when the group met, David had written a poem as if he was speaking to his wife. And after about 15 poems, I suggested to David that we publish a pamphlet of these poems, which we did with the title Requiem. And it had 3 editions, raising more than £400 for the charity Freedom from Torture. David then went on to carefully archive all of Kay's writings and eventually edit a book called It Takes a Lifetime to Become Yourself. Now, whose legacy is this? David or Kay, or both? And if you extend the legacy to all the people in David's address book, all the people who read Requiem, who read Kay's book, and the pamphlet of David's poems distributed at his funeral, individual legacy blurs into the reality of interconnectedness. This book, Living or Dying, is part of David's legacy. It is our legacy too. By writing and editing David's, we begin to own, take part, take them to heart. He was the scribe and the written voice and the host of our group. Most of what you read here was first written by David, followed by comments suggested by others. When helping the family to clear his flat and decide how best to distribute his possessions, which were beyond the realm of the legal will, I sifted through more than 300 poetry books. Some went to Oxfam, some of the Bank Street writers chose favourite authors. Most of the poetry books were donated to the Scottish Poetry Library. But there were thousands of more books, and while sorting with his daughter, she pointed to one shelf with a meagre 17 books and said, "Those are the books my father wrote." The family went through all the drawers, sifted through photos and letters, remembering their own childhoods. There were sculptures that were given to Glasgow museums, garden tools to Kirkley allotments. There was a Glasgow flat to sell, a house on Easdale Island, 3 concertinas, and numerous paintings. Many by David, who was a fine draftsman and could have trained to be an architect. David's legacy is kindness and generosity, the way he shared his many resources. Speaking to Power is the title of a recent publication by David, a history of mental health advocacy in Scotland. David inspired a passion for social justice. He had a keen awareness of what causes poverty and inequality, and tirelessly campaigned to make poverty history. After death, the living have so much to do. There's little time to grieve. Does grieving ever end? As Professor Kelly Hoare says, the thing I learned most about death is that the more you scratch at it, the less you can find it. The more you look for death, the only thing that you find there is life. I feel David's presence in me. Yes, the person I knew, loved, and respected has gone. His worldly goods have been distributed among family and friends and beyond. I published another pamphlet of his poems, The Path That Leads to the Whole Wide World, which has already raised over £500 for Trees for Life. David's legacy lives on in the memory of his nearest and dearest. His gifts to me and many others are inspiration, being a model of a creative human being to the last breath, taking responsibility for his life and his death. What has he left behind? Everything. Nothing is ever finished. Unanswered emails, letters, incomplete projects like this book, notebooks, pots and pans, bottles of wine, whiskey, and more whiskey, fridge, washing machine, all that stuff. I took 6 black plastic bin bags of paper and card to the recycling dump. Opening the bags, the plastics not for recycling, I found sketchbooks and academic books and journals. I retrieved some of these to take to Oxfam Books. The exquisite drawings in his sketchbooks are now on my shelves awaiting my death. After death, there is so much to do and so little time, especially family who may have travelled far and allowed only a few days to get David's flat pristine and potential for buyers. At some point in life, most of us will have to take a turn at organizing a funeral. For ideas on how to do it, try www.finalfling.com or www.dyingmatters.org. In our dialogue group, we tell death stories, good deaths and bad deaths, good funerals and difficult funerals, the death of a neighbour, the death of a friend. We share griefs and losses and help each other with documents such as wills and advance directives. Sample forms can be found here, compassionindying.org.uk. We talk about self-deliverance and dignity in dying, www.dignityindying.org.uk. We encourage each other to write our own eulogy. Have you written yours? What is your legacy to be? And once everything is sorted, sold, distributed, donated, what is left? our memories and mementos, such as a Buddhist sculpture now gracing our mantelpiece. It may have come from Burma, where David was born. What else? We have David's poems, one of which follows. It's called Life Giving Death by David Donaldson. Each living thing is heading for death. You and me, this great oak tree, lashed by gales for 1,000 years, this prancing child dancing with delight, all of us voyaging into the night. Each generation of every species must be ground to pieces in the mills of mortality. Death enables this lively child to think new thoughts, a new morality. She and her friends remake the nation. Love leads to loss, loss to creation. Grief for me and those dearest me is the price we pay to keep life thriving. Great oaks as they fall give sunlight and space to saplings striving to take their place.
This poem's in the book and it's called Water of the Lethe by Janet Paisley. I am waiting for the dark while night threads inshore, fingers round my calf, strokes my thigh. Lovers, among other things, were never this sure. Were mere diversion as a breath held, drawn in, must be expelled. I stand, face the oncoming tide, while sand shifts in the backwater of a breaker. The sea sucks, sighs, tugs, pulls, tries temptation. Alas, love, whose benediction burrows beneath my feet. I sink, cliffs crumble, stones fall. I know this sea, it wins all. I asked her, time is all now, Janet. Where are you with that? She answered, I could hope now, Linda, for life, to live longer, to have my cancer cured, but that would mean setting myself up for major disappointments. The doctors have said that I'm terminally ill, and I trust them not to say so if that isn't the case. So I'm trying, and sometimes failing to be brave and strong and face up to that. Death comes to everybody, and it's the price we all pay for living. I've been extraordinarily lucky to have lived this long, to have done so much, to be able to enjoy even yet living my life to the fullest it can possibly be. And I've had the most incredible life, jam-packed with big things, ups and downs, all of which add meaning to my life, to who I am and what I do. If I die tomorrow, I won't feel I've missed anything. Quite the opposite.
To have access to the silence. To feel part of the silence that is part of that which shares you and not you. To feel not liable to be attacked at an ontological level. To sense being as not being deprived of being. To sense that it is okay, whatever it is that is a way of describing you. To sense that it as being something that includes all of your being from the time you were born. To sense that it as being something that includes all of your being from the time you were born. To sense that it is okay, whatever it is that is a way of describing you. To sense being as not being deprived of being. To feel not liable to be attacked at an ontological level. To feel part of the silence that's part of that which shares you and not you. To have access to the silence.